Fear. It's the silent killer of dreams. The invisible wall between where you are and where you could be. Let me tell you this. Fear is a liar. Fear is a thief. And today we're going to expose it, confront it, and destroy it forever. Most people think fear is something you avoid. Fear is something you face. You want a better life? You want real success? Then you must be willing to do the very thing fear tells you not to do. Fear thrives in the unknown. It grows in silence, in confusion, and in the dark corners of your mind where clarity hasn't reached yet. The reason fear feels so overwhelming is not because of its size, but because of its vagueness. When you can't quite define what you're afraid of, your mind creates exaggerated outcomes, worst-case scenarios, and imaginary threats that appear far more dangerous than they actually are. The unknown gives fear its power. It creates a fog where you can't see clearly, and when you can't see clearly, you hesitate, you freeze, and you start believing that the worst could happen at any moment. That's how fear controls P.O. Plenot with truth, but with shadows. Your mind fills in the blanks, and it usually fills them with danger, judgment, or failure. The less you understand something, the more room fear has to distort it. Think about the last time you felt truly afraid of something. Was it the actual situation that scared you? Or was it the story you were telling yourself about what might happen? The human brain is designed to protect you, to keep you safe from danger. But in the absence of real danger, it often turns its protective instincts into mental barriers, making ordinary situations feel threatening simply because they're unfamiliar. When something is new, uncertain, or not fully understood, the mind tends to assume risk. That's a survival instinct, but it doesn't serve you when you're trying to grow, evolve, or pursue your goals. In fact, fear of the unknown is often what keeps people from even starting. They don't know what will happen if they step forward, so they never take the first step. They don't know what others will think, so they stay silent. They don't know if they'll succeed, so they never try. And in that indecision, fear grows stronger. The key is not to eliminate fear by avoiding unknowns. That's impossible. Life is full of uncertainty, and that's never going to change. The key is to reduce fear by increasing awareness. When you take the time to clarify what exactly you're afraid of, the fear starts to shrink. When you investigate it, put language to it, and shine a light on it, you start to see it for what it really is, not a massive wall, but a fog that vanishes as you move toward it. The act of defining fear brings it out of your emotional brain and into your logical brain. And when fear is analyzed logically, it often loses its grip. You begin to realize that most of the fear was built not on reality, but on assumption and imagination. Name the fear to weaken it. One of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with fear is letting it remain undefined. When fear is left vague, it becomes overwhelming. It feels like a giant shadowy figure lurking just beyond the edge of your awareness. You know it's there, but you can't quite see it, and what you can't see you can't challenge. This is why naming your fear is such a powerful step. When you give your fear a name, you shrink it down to something specific, something that can be understood and dealt with directly. Fear without a name has the freedom to grow into anything your imagination allows. It becomes flexible, shifting, expanding to fill your thoughts in ways that don't even make logical sense. You might feel anxious about speaking up in a meeting, but because you haven't named the fear, it turns into a general sense of dread. You're not just afraid of the meeting, you're suddenly afraid of looking foolish, of being judged, of losing respect, and maybe even of being rejected entirely. One small fear that could have been addressed becomes a tangled web of imagined consequences. But the moment you stop and say, "I'm afraid of saying something stupid," you've given it a name. And when you name it, you take back control. Naming fear forces you to be honest with yourself. It requires that you slow down and look inward. It breaks the automatic cycle of reacting to fear without ever understanding it. Once you've named your fear, you can start to question it. Is it realistic? Is it based on past experience, or is it just something you picked up along the way from someone else? Is it really as dangerous as your mind is making it out to be? Most of the time, once fear is named, you'll find that it's not as threatening as it seemed when it was hidden. Naming your fear also gives you clarity. With clarity, you can make plans, you can prepare, you can build strategies. For example, if your fear is, "I'm afraid of failing," then you can ask yourself what failure really looks like in your situation. Is it a missed opportunity, a temporary setback, or just embarrassment? And once you define what failure means, you can start thinking of ways to minimize it, manage it, or recover from it if it happens. This proactive thinking is only possible when you've clearly named what you're afraid of. When you don't name your fear, it owns you. It controls your choices, limits your decisions, and keeps you stuck in hesitation. But when you name it, you start to separate yourself from it. You're no longer inside the fear, you're looking at it from the outside. That shift in perspective is powerful. It allows you to treat fear as a challenge to be solved rather than a force to be avoided. It becomes a problem, not a prison. The simple act of putting words to fear turns it from something emotional and irrational into something concrete and manageable. Fear tells lies, rewrite the story. Every person has an internal voice that narrates their life, a constant stream of thoughts that shape how they see the world and themselves. When fear is in control, that inner voice becomes distorted. It starts feeding you narratives that are not rooted in truth but in insecurity, doubt, and past experiences that no longer serve you. Fear is a master storyteller, and its stories are always designed to keep you small, safe, and stuck. It tells you that you're not ready, that you're not good enough, that success is for other people but not for you. These stories aren't based on your real abilities or potential. They're based on assumptions, on what-ifs, on imagined outcomes that may never come to pass. They are built from childhood memories, past failures, societal expectations, and the fear of judgment. Left unchecked, they become your reality. Not because they're true, but because you start living as if they are. If fear tells you you'll embarrass yourself if you speak, you stay quiet. If fear says you'll fail if you try, you don't begin. The story becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, not because it was accurate, but because you believed it. The way to break free from fear's grip is to become the author of your own story. You have the power to change the narrative, but it starts with recognizing that the voice of fear is not the voice of truth. It's just one perspective, and it's not even a helpful one. When you catch fear telling you a limiting story, question it. Where did it come from? Is it based on facts or just feelings? Is it protecting you from something real, or is it just trying to keep you comfortable by avoiding risk? Once you've questioned the fear-based story, you can begin to replace it. You can write a new narrative where you take risks, where you speak up, where you believe in your ability to figure things out even if you don't know everything right now. The mind is incredibly responsive to suggestion. The more you tell yourself a new story, the more your subconscious begins to accept it. And as you begin to act from that new narrative, your reality starts to shift to match it. This is not about blind optimism or pretending that fear doesn't exist. It's about choosing to take control of the voice that guides your decisions. It's about not giving fear the final word. You can acknowledge fear without obeying it. You can hear its story and then consciously choose a better one that empowers instead of paralyzes, one that builds confidence instead of insecurity. The more you practice rewriting the story, the more natural it becomes. You go from being a passive character in a fear-driven narrative to the deliberate author of your own life. You choose how you see yourself, how you show up, and how you move forward. And every time you do, the lies that fear tells lose their strength. Action is fear's worst enemy. Fear thrives in hesitation, in overthinking, in delay. The longer you sit still, the louder fear becomes. It has time to build scenarios in your mind, to inflate problems, to magnify every possible consequence. But the moment you move, the moment you take a step forward, no matter how small, you interrupt that cycle. Action breaks fear's momentum. It shifts your focus from imaginary outcomes to real progress. Fear cannot operate in the present moment. It lives in the future, in the what-ifs, in the imagined disasters that haven't happened yet. But action brings you back to now, to what you can do, to what's actually in front of you. Taking action doesn't mean being fearless. It means choosing to move forward despite the fear. That's what courage really is. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's action in the face of it. And when you act, you start collecting evidence. You prove to yourself that you can handle discomfort, that you can speak even when your voice shakes, that you can start even when the outcome is uncertain. Each act of courage chips away at the illusion that fear has created. Fear loves to exaggerate. It makes the unknown look 10 times bigger than it really is. But when you act, you get information. You see the situation for what it actually is. You might find out that what you feared was never really that bad, or you might face some difficulty, but now you know how to handle it. Either way, action gives you clarity, and clarity weakens fear. Thinking will not bring this clarity. You can't outthink fear. You can only outmove it. When you act, you also activate confidence. Confidence is not something you wait for, it's something you build. And you build it through repetition. You build it by doing the thing that scares you over and over until it no longer has the same power. Action teaches your nervous system that you are capable. It rewires your response to fear from freeze to forward. You stop seeing discomfort as danger and start seeing it as a sign that growth is happening. Even imperfect action is powerful. You don't have to get it right the first time. You just have to move. The fear of doing something wrong often stops people before they begin. But the truth is, doing it wrong is part of the process. Failure is feedback. Mistakes are data. You adjust, you learn, and you keep going. But none of that can happen until you act. The perfect plan, the ideal timing, the right conditions, those are just fear in disguise. They keep you planning forever, but never progressing. Action builds momentum. One step leads to the next. You start small, and with each move forward, you grow stronger, more focused. Repetition builds power over fear. One of the most misunderstood aspects of fear is the belief that it goes away permanently after a single breakthrough. In reality, fear is not something you conquer once and for all. It's something you outgrow gradually, through consistent exposure and repeated action. Just like a muscle, your courage must be trained. The first time you face a fear, it feels overwhelming. Your heart races, your hands shake, and your mind floods with reasons to back away. But the second time, it's a little easier. The third time, even more so. Eventually, what once terrified you becomes familiar, even routine. This transformation happens not through thought, but through repetition. Every time you face a fear and act anyway, you build a kind of internal resilience. Your brain learns that the danger it anticipated didn't happen, or if it did, it wasn't as bad as expected, and you survived it. That learning process is how confidence is built. Repetition tells your nervous system that this situation doesn't require panic. It teaches your mind that you are capable of handling uncertainty, discomfort, or even failure. Over time, the emotional charge tied to that fear weakens. What once triggered anxiety now triggers focus, strength, or even excitement. Habituation is a natural psychological process that works in your favor when dealing with fear. The more you expose yourself to what you fear, the less intimidating it becomes. This is why people who regularly speak in public, take risks, or face rejection eventually seem fearless, not because they were born brave. Repetition builds power over fear. One of the most misunderstood aspects of fear is the belief that it goes away permanently after a single breakthrough. In reality, fear is not something you conquer once and for all. It's something you outgrow gradually through consistent exposure and repeated action. Just like a muscle, your courage must be trained. The first time you face a fear, it feels overwhelming. Your heart races, your hands shake, and your mind floods with reasons to back away. But the second time, it's a little easier. The third time, even more so. Eventually, what once terrified you becomes familiar, even routine. This transformation happens not through thought, but through repetition. Every time you face a fear and act anyway, you build a kind of internal resilience. Your brain learns that the danger it anticipated didn't happen, or if it did, it wasn't as bad as expected, and you survived it. That learning process is how confidence is built. Repetition tells your nervous system that this situation doesn't require panic. It teaches your mind that you are capable of handling uncertainty, discomfort, or even failure. Over time, the emotional charge tied to that fear weakens. What once triggered anxiety now triggers focus, strength, or even excitement. Habituation is a natural psychological process that works in your favor when dealing with fear. The more you expose yourself to what you fear, the less intimidating it becomes. This is why people who regularly speak in public, take risks, or face rejection eventually seem fearless, not because they were born brave, but because they've repeated the experience enough times to rewire their response to it. The experience hasn't changed, but their relationship to it has. They've trained their minds and bodies not to react with panic, but with presence. The opposite is also true. If you avoid something out of fear, you reinforce the fear. You teach your brain that the thing you avoided was a threat. This deepens the fear and makes it even harder to face next time. Avoidance creates a cycle where fear becomes stronger and more ingrained. Repetition in the wrong direction feeds fear. Repetition in the right direction dissolves it. The key is to practice facing fear in small, manageable steps. You don't need to leap into the most extreme version of your fear right away. Start with what you can handle, push slightly beyond your comfort zone, and do it again tomorrow. Each repetition builds trust with yourself. You start to know that no matter how afraid you feel, you'll still show up. That knowledge becomes part of your identity. I am someone who does the hard things. I am someone who faces fear. Through repetition, fear loses its power not because you've eliminated it, but because you've learned to function with it. You've proven to yourself that fear doesn't have the final say. What begins as a shaky step turns into a steady walk, and eventually, a confident stride. Fear should never decide your future. Yet for many people, it do excellently, consistently, and without resistance. Decisions are made not based on potential, but on comfort. Opportunities are passed up not because they weren't right, but because they felt risky. Dreams are shelved not because they're impossible, but because they demand stepping into the unknown. Fear becomes the gatekeeper to every next level of life, whispering reasons to stay small, stay safe, stay the same. When fear drives your choices, you are no longer the one creating your future. You're reacting to it, shrinking from it, letting it happen to you rather than shaping it with intention. The truth is, every major turning point in life comes with fear attached. Fear of failing, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough, fear of leaving what's familiar behind. These feelings are not signs that something is wrong. They are signs that growth is near. But when fear is the one calling the shots, these moments are met not with action but retreat. The job you didn't apply for, the conversation you didn't have, the idea you never launched, these are all futures that were decided by fear, and over time, those choices compound. They build a life that looks safe on the outside but feels unfulfilled on the inside. Allowing fear to make decisions means giving up your power. It means placing your future in the hands of a voice that is not interested in your growth, your happiness, or your purpose. It only wants safety. Fear doesn't care if you become great. It only wants you to stay protected, even if that means staying stuck. But the life you truly want, the one filled with meaning, impact, love, and freedom, that life exists on the other side of discomfort. It's only accessible when you choose based on vision, not fear. Reclaiming your future starts with awareness. Every time you're faced with a choice, you can ask yourself, who's making this decision, me or my fear? You'll often find that fear disguises itself in logic, in excuses that sound reasonable. Now isn't the right time. I need more experience. I'll wait until I'm ready. But beneath those statements is almost always a fear that hasn't been acknowledged. When you call it out, you give yourself a moment of truth. And in that moment, you have a choice. Go the way you always have, or choose the path that stretches you. Courage is choosing discomfort today for a better tomorrow. It's looking fear in the face and deciding that it will not hold the pen that writes your story. When your vision becomes stronger than your fear, you begin to lead your life instead of managing it. You make decisions based on who you want to become, not on what you're afraid might happen. This shift is where personal power is born. It's where new futures are created, not dictated by fear, but designed by bold, conscious, fearless choice.